Just before he left the White House to give his speech at the Ellipse, Mr. Trump phoned Mr. Pence one last time. And when Mr. Pence told Mr. Trump that he planned to issue a public statement making it clear that he lacked the authority to do what Mr. Trump wanted, Mr. Trump expressed anger at him. He then directed staffers to reinsert into his planned speech some language that he had drafted earlier targeting Mr. Pence. That shit is crazy. Volume 1, The Election Case, report on efforts to interfere with the lawful transfer of power following the 2020 presidential election or the certification of the Electoral College vote held on January 6, 2021. What up, OG? How's it going, Biggs? I'm reading the Jack Smith report on Donald John Trump. Volume 1, The Election Case. We're starting with the results of the investigation. The juicy stuff. On November 18th, 2022, the Attorney General appointed the special counsel to oversee an ongoing investigation into whether any person or entity violated the law in connection with efforts to interfere with the lawful transfer of power following the 2020 election or the certification of the Electoral College vote held on January 6, 2021. As a result of that investigation, on August 1st, 2023, a federal grand jury in the District of Columbia charged Donald J. Trump with 4 felony offenses arising from his efforts to unlawfully retain power by using fraud and deceit to overturn the 2020 election results. Saw you were on and was about to hop in VC, but saw you were streaming, so I figured come bug you here instead. Yeah, I'm in VC mostly, so I mean, like, if anybody, you know, has a specific point that they want to make about the investigation or the report, or has any, you know, disagreements, then they can come in. That's the main reason why I'm in there. But it is open call, so if you want to come in and chat, feel free. After the Supreme Court held last summer that Mr. Trump was immune. Before you read it, do you think Trump should be disqualified under the insurrection clause? Probably. Yeah, probably. But also, it's touchy. I do think that he should be disqualified under the insurrection clause. However, the thing that the Supreme Court brought up about Article 5 of the 14th Amendment is convincing to me. I just don't know what the constitutional context of that means. And I'll see if this changes your answer. Yeah, that would be under... So, the Article 5 of the 14th Amendment says, and Congress has the authority to enforce this, or something along the lines. But I don't know if that necessarily means that the amendment is self-enforcing or not, and that's the main thing that I would wonder, is if the amendment is seen as self-enforcing. I lean towards yes, but I'm not 100% sold on that. After the Supreme Court held last summer that Mr. Trump was immune from prosecution for certain misuse of official power alleged in the indictment, a second grand jury found probable cause to return a superseding indictment charging the same offenses based on his non-immunized conduct. Mr. Trump was thereafter re-elected as the President of the United States. As a result, on November 25th, 2024, the special counsel moved to dismiss the case against Mr. Trump because the Department of Justice's long-standing position that the Constitution forbids the federal indictment and prosecution of a sitting president. I don't think that's true, but I mean, slay. I know that that's like DOJ policy. I don't think that... I don't know why the Constitution would forbid that. It doesn't say it anywhere. This volume focuses on the election case against Mr. Trump, and consistent with the applicable regulations, provides an explanation of the persecution decisions reached by special counsel. The first section of this volume sets forth a summary of key facts gleaned from the investigation, a vast majority of which are already a matter of public record through the litigation that occurred before the district court. The second section discusses the statutes that Mr. Trump was charged with violating, applying facts developed during the investigation to the law as special counsel office understood it. This section also addresses other charges that the office considered but did not pursue. Ooh, I wonder... Does that include... I wonder if that'll include like an insurrection thing. And the defense is that the office expected Mr. Trump to raise at trial. The third section explains, so that's going to be in the second section. The third section explains why the special counsel's decision to prosecute Mr. Trump was fully consistent and indeed was compelled by the principles of federal prosecution. Oh my God. Just so you guys know, I'm a stutterer, so this might be kind of hellish, but the fourth section describes the office's investigative procedures and policies. Finally, the fifth section of this volume discusses a series of investigative and prosecutive issues that the office confronted in the election case. Here's the meat. In 2020, then President Donald J. Trump ran for election against Joseph R. Biden Jr. Donald Trump lost, as alleged in the original and superseding. I think they would have had to impeach him, then get a Senate conviction in order to disqualify him, especially for insurrection or something similar. Yeah, that'd be the question, but then it arises that a lot of people in the Senate, when he was impeached with January 6th, said that they didn't vote for conviction because they didn't think that there was questions about whether you could impeach a sitting president. So then it feels like the window to actually prosecute this particular thing is like impossibly short. I don't think that requiring an impeachment from Congress in order to prosecute or remove him from the ballot would be satisfying, because it'd be almost impossible. Subsequent evidence demonstrate that Mr. Trump then engaged in unprecedented criminal act to overturn the legitimate results of the election in order to retain power. Although he did so primarily in his private capacity as a candidate, and with the assistance of multiple private co-conspirators, Mr. Trump also attempted to use the power and the authority of the United States government in furtherance of his scheme. This might be a little sketchy, because I know that it's said that official presidential actions are not admissible in court, but I don't know. I feel like Attorney General reports getting released is something that's like kind of novel. And that like just kind of started happening, so I don't even know if he's allowed to go into the details of this if it wasn't admissible in court. I think that's how the Constitutional reads, and is what the Supreme Court has kind of said. What the Supreme Court said is that when Colorado was trying to get Donald Trump removed by the 14th Amendment, it said, well, this is Congress's job, but the example that they listed out is like Congress needing to pass a piece of legislation that allows the Attorney General or the courts to then remove. Like, there had to be a piece of congressional legislation before any removal happens, but to me that feels like it's in violation of like the ability for the states to run their own elections. And again, this is the main point that keeps fucking me up, is that I don't necessarily know in context what and Congress has the ability to enforce this means, because it says that at the end of almost every amendment, but it feels like all of these amendments are self-executing. It doesn't feel like they actually do require if congressional enforcement was the only thing that allowed these amendments to be enforced, then why even pass the amendment? Why not just pass a piece of legislation? Okay, so I'm pretty sure even in the 19th Amendment, it says, you cannot discriminate, or like anyone who is disallowed to vote on the grounds of sex, is now allowed to vote or whatever. And then the second part is that Congress has the ability to enforce all of the above or whatever. But I don't know if there's a piece of legislation that prevents the states from like disallowing women to vote. I feel like that amendment is like self-executing, but I don't know that for sure. Like I don't know if that's accurate. If that like feels satisfying to me, but that's the only question that I'd have, is if that amendment is actually self-executing. Anyway, but yeah, I don't even know if this is admissible into a report like this. But I guess, I mean, it's already out, so, you know. As set forth in the original and superseding indictments, when it became clear that Mr. Trump had lost the election by lawful means of challenging the election results, he resorted to a series of criminal efforts to retain power. This included attempts to induce state officials to ignore the true vote counts, to manufacture fraudulent slates of presidential electors in 7 states that he had lost, to force the Justice Department officials and his own Vice President, Michael R. Pence, to act in contravention of their own oaths, and to instead advance Mr. Trump's personal interests, and on January 6, 2021, directed an angry mob to the United States Capitol to obstruct the congressional certification of the presidential election, and then leveraged rioters' violence to further delay it. Okay. In service of these efforts, Mr. Trump worked with other people to achieve a common plan to overturn the election results and perpetuate himself in office. These individuals included co-conspirator 1, which I think was Rudy. Yes, Rudy Giuliani. A private attorney, yep. Private attorney who knowingly spread false claims and pursued strategies that Mr. Trump's campaign attorneys would not. Co-conspirator 2. Yeah, okay. We already know who all of these people are. Co-conspirator 1 is Rudy Giuliani. Co-conspirator 2 is John Eastman. Co-conspirator number 3 is Sidney Powell. Co-conspirator number 4 is Jeffrey Clark. Co-conspirator 5 is Kenneth Chesborough. And co-conspirator 6 is Boris Epstein. Yeah, okay. The through line of all of Mr. Trump's criminal efforts was deceit. Knowingly false claims of election fraud, and evidence shows that Mr. Trump used these lies as a weapon to defeat the federal government function foundational to the United States democratic process. Mr. Trump's false claims included dozens of specific claims regarding certain states, such as a large number of dead, non-resident, non-citizen, or otherwise ineligible voters had cast ballots, or that voting machines had changed the votes for Mr. Trump to votes against him. These claims were demonstrably and, in many cases, obviously false. The office investigated whether Mr. Trump believed these claims he had made. Evidence from a variety of sources established Mr. Trump knew that there was no outcome-determinative fraud in 2020, that many of the specific claims he made were untrue, and that he had lost the election. He knew this because some of the highest-ranking officials in his own administration, including the vice president, told him directly that there was no evidence to support his claims. Mr. Trump's private advisors, both within and outside of his campaign, told him the same. On November 13th, his own campaign conceded its litigation in Arizona, a state pivotal to the re-election prospects. State officials and legislatures whom Mr. Trump pressured to change vote tallies or stop certification results rebuffed him and informed him that his fraud claims were wrong, both privately and through public statements. Mr. Trump also monitored legal developments regarding the election. Holy shit. And was on notice that the state and federal courts rejected every post-election lawsuit that Mr. Trump and his allies filed claiming outcome-determinative election fraud. Mr. Trump and co-conspirators could not have believed specific fraud claims and they were making because the numbers they touted, for instance, of dead voters in a particular state, frequently facilitated I don't know. Frequently. Varied. Varied wildly from day to day, or were objectively impossible. Including, for example, co-conspirator 3's claims about voting machines that Mr. Trump privately acknowledged sound crazy, before he publicly amplified them. Finally, at times, Mr. Trump made comments implicitly acknowledging that he had lost the election. For example, in a January 3rd, 2021 Oval Office meeting regarding national security matters, Mr. Trump stated in part, "It's too late for us. We're going to..." Oh, whoa. We're going to have to give it to the next guy. I don't know if that proves that he knew he lost. Like, that just means he knows that the legal challenges are fucked. Mr. Trump aimed his deceit at the United States processes of collecting, counting, and certifying votes, which flows from the Constitution and a federal law enacted in 1886 called the Electoral Count Act. The Constitution provides that the United States president is selected through votes of individuals called electors, and that each state determines how to appoint its electors. Through state laws, all 50 states and the District of Columbia have chosen to select their electors based on popular vote. Therefore, after Election Day, pursuant to the ECA, each state formally determines or ascertains its electors based on the popular vote. My question is, and I know how the process works, it's just a question of like what the proper terminology is. So the DNC and the RNC choose electors, but then the state certifies the ones that are like authorized to cast their electoral ballot. What do you call the potential electors that the RNC and the DNC chose, but the government hasn't yet certified? I don't know. Okay. And their ascertained electors mail their electoral votes along with a certification from the state executive that they are the state's legitimate electors to the United States Congress to be counted and certified in an official proceeding. The Constitution and the ECA provide that on the 6th of January, following Election Day, the Congress meets for that certification proceeding, which is presided over the Vice President as President of the Senate. The legitimate electors are voted, counted, or votes are opened and counted, and the winner is certified. Until Mr. Trump obstructed it, the democratic process had operated in a peaceful and orderly manner for more than 130 years. I've had people, like Republicans, Trump supporters, whoever, literally deny that this part happens, that a certification from the state's executive that they are the legitimate electors gets mailed with the certificate, with the votes. But then the question, okay, so the certificate of ascertainment, I think, is the certification from the state, right? I need to learn more specifically about how the votes are cast, because I don't know if the certificate of ascertainment actually is the electoral ballot that gets counted, or if the certificate of ascertainment is the state's certification saying, hey, these electors are our electors. One of Mr. Trump's efforts to change the results of the election involved targeting the electoral process at the state level through politically aligned state officials. Mr. Trump contacted the state legislatures and executives, pressured them with false claims of election fraud in their states, and urged them to take action to ignore the vote counts and change the results. Significantly, he made election claims only to state legislatures and executives who shared his political affiliation and were his political supporters, and only in states that he lost. Yeah. Okay. Now is where we want to start taking notes. Okay. Let's drop down everything. This is everything. I'm probably going to release a January 6th doc. Okay, so Trump's immunity claim, harassment of prosecutors. We'll put this down there. Yeah, we want harassing state legislatures. We want to keep this part. We're going to cite this as the Jack Smith report. Oh, hold on. Jack. Holy shit. Wait, hold on. Okay, I'm being really stupid right here. There we go. Okay. Page 8. Just got home. Did I miss anything big? This is mainly just a... So, the first piece of concrete, anything that we've gotten... Or that anything that I could see being concrete is probably like you just arrived at the right time, because this is probably going to be where we start getting into the meat of it. The rest was just like procedural. I don't. Okay, we'll do page of the PDF. I think that's what I did for the rest of them. Okay. For instance, Mr. Trump and Rudy Giuliani called the Speaker of the Arizona House of Representatives on November 22nd and used false fraud claims to convince the Speaker to call the state's legislature into session and replace Arizona's legitimate electors with Mr. Trump's illegitimate ones. Okay, so... I think we should put, like, a goal thing, and then Trump's campaign's goal of contacting state officials was to get them to hold special special legislative sessions in order to get the state to recall their electors and replace them with Trump's. So, also, in order, I'm pretty sure, maybe I'm wrong, in order to call, like, legislative sessions in most of these states, I think they need to have, like, reason to do it. Like, they have to have some sort of evidence in order to call, like, a special session of the legislature, and Donald Trump's allies weren't providing any of it. So I'm pretty sure needs particular evidence which was never requires, I think, is stronger. I remember reading that somewhere. I need to fact check that though. This should go up here. Maybe Jack Smith will get into it. Okay. Cool. November 22nd. Do I have anything there? 22nd, Rudy Giuliani call Speaker of the House of Representatives, Rusty Bowers. Yeah. I want to replace this with the Smith thing, though. I have to get the fucking citation, though. Listen, this is going to be a little scuffed. So, it happens. 11:22. 11:22. I want to try to replace whatever I can from the Georgia indictment with what I can from this report. Just because a lot, like, the Georgia indictment is, like, kind of dead in the water, I think. Use false fraud claims to convince the Speaker of the House to call the state legislature into session and replace Arizona's legitimate electors with Donald Trump's illegitimate ones. Rudy Giuliani tried to coerce the Arizona Speaker, telling him, "We're all kind of Republicans. We need to be working together." The Arizona Speaker refused to do so, or refused to do what he was asked, and requested co-conspirator 1 provide any evidence to support his fraud claims. But he conceded to the Arizona Speaker in person. We don't have the evidence, but we have a lot of theories. Yeah. Do we have that? Did it say would later? A week later. Okay, hold on. Let's just do a lot of theory. Okay. Smith motion. Okay. We already have that. Let's see what happened in this call that I had listed. Trump and Giuliani falsely assert, among other things, that a substantial number of non-citizen, non-residents, and dead people had voted fraudulently in Arizona. Bowers asked him for evidence. Giuliani says he does not have it, but would later provide some. To hold. There it is. Okay. So the speakers of the House. Okay, so it doesn't require, I suppose, but hold on. Okay. So requires votes to start a hearing. To be brought by House speakers, rejected by all due to lack of evidence. I think all of them rejected to hold any special legislative sessions because of lack of evidence. The Arizona Speaker refused to do. What was that? Well, yeah, a lot of theories. Okay, yeah. Despite this lack of fraud evidence, Mr. Trump and others continued to pressure the Arizona speaker to overturn the election results. Mr. Trump similarly leaned on other state officials, always those of the same political party. On June 2nd, 2021, just days before the election results were to be certified, he called Raffensperger to find him 11,000 votes, Mr. Biden's margin of victory in the state. When the Secretary of State refuted Mr. Trump's false claims, Mr. Trump issued a threat stating because what they did and you're not reporting it, that's a criminal offense, and you can't let that happen. That's a big risk to you. Mr. Trump also pressed state legislators in Michigan by inviting them to the White House on November 20th, raising claims of election fraud and bringing Giuliani to the meeting on the phone. Yeah, I remember this. Mr. Trump engaged in these efforts even though trusted state and party officials had told him at the outset that there was no evidence of fraud in the election. In Arizona, Mr. Trump called the governor on November 9th, a week after Election Day, and after both Fox News and the Associated Press had projected that Donald Trump had lost the state. Using a baseball metaphor, the governor told Mr. Trump it was a ninth inning, 2 outs, and he was several runs down. The governor asked Mr. Trump to send evidence of the alleged fraud. Mr. Trump suggested that he would do so, but never did. November 9th. So did I get rid of my claims of fraud? I don't think I did. Election fraud claims. Okay, fraud, whack-a-mole. I'll send you the evidence, okay. This is page 16. Damn it. Let me get the citation real quick. So this is page 17, I believe. Wow, there's another one. Hold on. How many times do they do this? Just say like, LOL, yeah, I'll send you the evidence, and then just don't. Governor was Brian Kemp, right? Governor of Arizona in 2020. Okay. I'm back. Sorry. Okay. Governor of Arizona. Ducey. It was Doug Ducey. My bad. Kemp, I think, was Georgia. So, in Arizona, Mr. Trump calls AZ Governor Doug Ducey about claims of election fraud. Okay. And that's according to... Damn it! Keep losing the goddamn citation. 18. Okay. What are the citations for this? Oh, I have no idea. In Pennsylvania, just 2 days after the election, the chairman of the state's Republican Party, who represented Mr. Trump in previous election litigation, refused Mr. Trump's claim that it was suspicious that his early lead kept slipping away. The chairman explained that there was still roughly 1.7 million mail-in ballots to be counted, which were expected to heavily weigh in Biden's favor. In the course of conversations like these, state officials better poised than Mr. Trump to know the facts of the states repeatedly told Mr. Trump that his fraud claims were unfounded and that there was no evidence of substantial election fraud. Okay, so nothing much that we didn't already know. That's okay. This shouldn't be... Oh, alright, hold on. I'm being stupid. Fraud claims. That just needs to drop. Okay. Okay, the electors. As December 14th, the date the ECA required the state's electors to vote and send their certificates of vote to Congress. I'm sorry, excuse me. Approached, Mr. Trump and co-conspirators launched another plan. Under this plan, they would organize the people who have served as Mr. Trump's electors, had he won the popular vote in 7 states that Mr. Trump had lost, and cause them to sign and send to Washington false certificates claiming to be legitimate electors. Ultimately, as explained below, Mr. Trump and co-conspirators used fraudulent certificates to try to obstruct the congressional certification proceeding. The fraudulent electors plan's arc is reflected in a series of memoranda drafted in late November to early December by co-conspirator 5, who initially portrayed it as a contingency to preserve the possibility that Trump's electors would be counted on January 6th if he prevailed in an ongoing election litigation. But as described below, the plan quickly transformed into a corrupt strategy to obstruct the certification proceeding and overturn the valid election results. Ooh. Mr. Trump set the fraudulent elector plan into motion in early December, ensured that it was carried out by co-conspirators and campaign agents in the targeted states, and monitored its progress. Okay. Oh, okay. Trump's involvement. I think I have a section about that. Yeah, I do. Okay, hold on. This is 2. Trump's involvement. So we have making calls to state legislators, meetings with Pence to pressure him to take part in Eastman plan. We have so December 6th. During the call, co-conspirator 2 told a lie that the co-conspirators would use to induce the cooperation of many of the fraudulent electors, that Mr. Trump's electors would only be voting if litigation succeeded. From that point on, Mr. Trump communicated Okay, so we have I don't even have the little scrolly wheel thing. Damn it. Copy. For the most part. Yeah, so they sent the directions. From that point on, Mr. Trump communicated with Giuliani and Eastman about the plan, and they in turn communicated with from what I'd say 11/6 onward. Trump communicated with John Eastman and Rudy Giuliani about the electors' plan, and they communicated with Epstein and Chesborough. How do you spell Epstein? Okay. Okay. This deception was crucial to the conspiracy, as many who participated in the fraudulent electors would not have done so if they had known the true extent of the co-conspirators' plan. Not all Mr. Trump's elector nominees were persuaded, forging the co-conspirators to recruit substitutes in some targeted states. For example, one Trump nominee in Pennsylvania recognized the plan as illegal and an attempt to overturn the government and declined to participate. How did I not know that? Page 22. Okay. Conversely, a select few of Mr. Trump's agents and elector nominees had insight to the ultimate plan to use the fraudulent elector certificates to disrupt the congressional certification on January 6th and willingly assisted. On December 9th, after a phone call with Chesborough, one of the campaign's agents wrote in an email that Chesborough's plan for the electors was kind of wild and creative. Do I have that? No, I don't think so. I assume that this is Jim Tropis, though. He responds that the plan to send fake electoral votes to Pence was kind of wild / creative. I'm gonna make like a little notes app thing so I can just keep my citations. That should save us a lot of going up and down. 2.5 hours later, he replied to his own email as a cover and wrote, "Alternative votes is probably better than the term fake votes." To keep the plan under wraps until Congress counts the vote on January 6th. Chesbro replies. That part's really bad. Do I have that part? Alternative. Okay. This is wrong. Okay. Glad we got that out of the way. Wait, hold on, what? Oh, wait, no, okay. So that's still Tropus, I think. He replies again, saying, okay, cool. In each of the targeted states, Trump and his co-conspirators successfully organized enough elector nominees and substitutes to gather on December 14th, cast fraudulent electoral votes on his behalf, send them to Washington, D.C. for congressional certification, a fact that the RNC chairwoman relayed to Donald Trump on the evening. Ooh. Okay. So that Ronna McDaniel lady made a specific point Ronna, I think it was Ronna McDaniel, the RNC chairwoman, relayed to Mr. Trump on the evening of December 14th that the false electors had sent their certificates Smith report, page 23. At the same time, Mr. Trump's elector nominees in the targeted states were preparing to gather and cast fraudulent votes. His co-conspirators were planning to use them to overturn the results of the January 6th certification. On January 13th, Epstein sent... On December 16th, Chesbro traveled to Washington with a group of private attorneys who had done work for Mr. Trump's campaign in Wisconsin for a meet and greet with Mr. Trump in the Oval Office. As the group left, Chesbro had a private, direct conversation with Mr. Trump. Days later, December 19th, Mr. Trump publicly posted a tweet demonstrating his own focus on the certification proceeding, and directed his supporters to gather in Washington, D.C. to oppose it. At 1:42 a.m., he posted a copy of the report falsely alleging outcome-determinative fraud and wrote, "Statistically impossible to have lost the 2020 election. Big protest on January 6th. Be there, be wild." Or be there, will be wild. That same day, notified another attendee of the December 16th Oval Office meeting of Mr. Trump's tweet, and he indicated that Mr. Trump had privately foreshadowed his plans on January 6th, writing, "Wow, based on 3 days ago, I think we have a unique understanding of this." Wait, what? Okay. His effort to directly pressure state officials to discount legitimate electors or legitimate votes failed, and the fraudulent elector plan unfolded. Mr. Trump also tried another tack. He attempted to wield federal power to perpetuate his fraud claims and retain office. Mr. Trump was frustrated with the Justice Department because of its criminal investigations had identified no evidence of substantial fraud, and the Attorney General had publicly acknowledged that fact in an interview on December 1st by saying, among other things, "To date, we have not seen fraud on the scale that could have affected different outcome in the election. As a result, Mr. Trump considered appointing Attorney General because described below. Clark was willing to use the Justice Department to spread Trump's lies and pressure targeted states to overturn election results." Oh boy. This is the letter. Throughout the post-election period, the Justice Department officials reviewed Mr. Trump's claims of fraud but found no evidence of any of them, and informed him of such. In one discussion, when the acting Attorney General advised Mr. Trump that the Justice Department could not just, quote, snap its fingers and change the election's outcome, Mr. Trump said they should just say the election was corrupt and leave the rest to me and the Republican congressmen. In the same call, alluding to replacing the Justice Department leadership if they did not do as he directed, Mr. Trump also said, "People tell me Clark is great. I should put him in." Mr. Trump knew about Clark because he had been introduced to Clark by a member of Congress. He had been secretly engaging with Clark, who was communicating with Mr. Trump in contravention of policies designed to protect the independence of the Justice Department. On December 28th, as his secret communications with Mr. Trump continued, Clark emailed the acting Attorney General and acting Deputy Attorney General a proposed letter that falsely claimed that the Justice Department had identified significant concerns that may have impacted the outcome of the election in multiple states, and recommended that those state legislatures convene in special session to reconsider certification of their votes. Within about an hour of receiving the draft letter, the acting Deputy Attorney General pointedly rejected Clark's proposal, saying, "I know nothing that would support the statement. We have identified significant concerns." Wow. Okay, wait. Hold on. Okay. So, after Clark sends first draft, I don't know how to spell his last name. We're just gonna say Richard tells him within about an hour, I know nothing that would impact. He also observed that the Justice Department had no role in the state's administration of their own elections, saying, "I cannot imagine a scenario in which the Justice Department would recommend its legislature to determine." Also saying, that's 18. Sorry. Nonetheless, Mr. Trump continued to circumvent the Justice Department leadership and directly engage with Clark. With Mr. Trump's intervention, Clark obtained highly classified briefing on foreign interference in the 2020 election on January 2nd, 2021, a brief that yielded nothing to support the conspirators' allegations, as demonstrated by contemporaneous electronic messages between Clark and the member of Congress who had introduced Clark to Trump. Yet the following day, Mr. Trump attempted to install Clark as the acting attorney general. On January 3rd, after Trump offered the position to Clark and Clark informed the Justice Department senior leadership that he would be accepting it, Mr. Trump, Clark, and senior officials from the Justice Department and the White House counsel's office gathered for a hastily scheduled meeting in the Oval Office. Mr. Trump made clear that he wanted to appoint Clark because Clark would cause the Justice Department to send targeted states the false letter that the acting attorney general rejected as improper. Mr. Trump ultimately did not do so because he was informed that if he did, mass resignations within the Justice Department and the White House would result in Clark leading a graveyard. Near the end of the meeting, when Clark raised the idea of the Justice Department opining on the vice president's roles during the congressional certifications, Mr. Trump told all those assembled that no one other than him should be talking to the president, or to the vice president. Oh boy. Okay. Let's take a second. We've been going at this for about an hour. I need a break from reading for a second. Let my brain kind of refresh. Might get some people in there. I kind of hope we do. That'd be nice. Boy. Be nice if we could have a round 2 with Wise Guy. That'd be something. Probably not, though. Probably not. We still have the one person that I might debate it with at some point. Okay. Alright. Pressuring the vice president. I think instead of putting it right into the timeline, we should just make notes up here and then integrate that into the timeline. Oh, this is like way. Okay, wait, hold on. Is that gonna fuck up anything? Let me see if this is fucking with anything. I don't think so. Okay, cool. Okay. I think we're good. Okay. Guess we can, okay. All right. Mr. Trump wanted no one else speaking to the Vice President Pence because he and co-conspirators were already implementing a secret plan to use Mr. Pence's ministerial role as President of the Senate to Mr. Trump's advantage. Eastman, with assistance from Epstein and Chesbrough, spearheaded the execution of strategy which Eastman had recently conceded was not supported by the Constitution or federal law. For Mr. Pence to decline to the count of the legitimate electoral certificates in the targeted states where Mr. Trump's electors had signed fraudulent ones. In the weeks before the certification, Mr. Trump began pressuring Mr. Pence to cooperate both directly and by mobilizing Trump supporters. In repeated conversations day after day, Mr. Trump pressured Mike Pence to use his ministerial role as the president of the Senate to change the election outcome, often by citing false claims of election fraud as justification. He even falsely told Mr. Pence that the Justice Department was finding major infractions. Oh, shit. Okay. This is big. So, that goes towards knowingly lying, because he had been informed by Clark and Rosen that they had not been election fraud claims. Okay. We need knowingly lying. When Mr. Pence repeatedly refused to act as Mr. Trump wanted, Mr. Trump told him that hundreds of thousands of people would hate his guts and think he was stupid, and told Pence that he was too honest. Yeah, okay, when was the too honest? On January 1st. Surrounding these communications, Mr. Trump frequently looked to Twitter to exhort supporters to travel to Washington January 6th when he tweeted, yeah. Okay. On January 4th, 2 days before the certification proceeding, Mr. Trump arranged for Mr. Pence to meet with Eastman in the Oval Office in hopes that Eastman could convince Mr. Pence to accede. During the meeting, Eastman outlined 2 ways that Mr. Pence could affect the election outcome with his role during the certification. He could eject electors outright, denying Mr. Biden an electoral majority and likely sending the selection of the president to the House of Representatives, where fellow Republican-controlled majority state delegations, or he could send the electorate slates to the targeted state legislatures for them to choose which electoral votes should be counted. Okay, so this is even stupider than I thought. Because I've had, like, Republicans gaslight me into saying, like, oh, they mean, like, for send it back to the states as in, like, let the state delegations vote. This means that he's trying to send it back to the state legislatures so they recertify their already certified votes. Like, why the fuck would you ever do that? In response to Mr. Pence questioning, Eastman admitted both violated the ECA and were untested. When Mr. Pence turned to Mr. Trump and pointed out that even Trump's lawyer did not think Mr. Pence had the authority to return electoral votes back to the states, Mr. Trump said that he liked the other thing better, which Mr. Pence understood to mean Mr. Pence simply rejecting electoral votes outright. Yeah. That's why I always focus so hard on the rejecting electors outright thing, because this is the one that Donald Trump said that he liked the other thing better. That night, Mr. Trump, in a speech, I hope Mike comes through with for us. Of course, if he doesn't come through, I won't like him quite as much. The next day, on January 5th, when Mr. Trump again failed to make headway with Mr. Pence in a private conversation, Mr. Trump warned that he would have to publicly criticize Mr. Pence. Mr. Trump, in response to a New York Times report on the conversation between Mr. Trump and Mr. Pence, issued a false statement claiming that the Vice President and I are in total agreement that the Vice President has power to act. That's so strange. Okay. How long is this section? Mr. Trump's efforts to remain in power converged and culminated on January 6th, the day that Mr. Biden was certified president. That day, Mr. Trump was scheduled to speak at the Ellipse to the crowd of supporters that he had summoned to Washington with false claims of election fraud. Around 1 a.m. on the morning of January 6th, Mr. Trump tweeted, "If Vice President Mike Pence comes through for us, we win the presidency. Many states want to decertify the mistakes they made in certifying the incorrect and even fraudulent members in the process, not approved by state legislatures," which it must be. Mike can send it back. It was. It was. Just before he left the White House to give his speech at the Ellipse, Mr. Trump phoned Mr. Pence one last time. And when Mr. Pence told Mr. Trump that he planned to issue a public statement making it clear that he lacked the authority to do what Mr. Trump wanted, Mr. Trump expressed anger at him. He then directed staffers to reinsert into his planned speech some language that he had drafted earlier targeting Mr. Pence. That shit is crazy. Okay. Alright, hold on. There's just so much here. Like, there's so much evidence that it's hard to comb through what's the best. Trump then directs Payne staff to insert drafted lines targeting Mike Pence. His speech at the Ellipse targeting Mike Pence. That happened on January 6th. Okay. Okay. During his speech at the Ellipse, Mr. Trump made one more attempt to retain power in his remarks. Trump repeated many of the same lies he had been telling for months, and he told newer ones, lies that targeted states wanted to change their electors and that Mike Pence had the authority and might be persuaded to change the results. The lie resulted in regarding Mr. Pence was particularly deceptive because Mr. Pence knew that his supporters in the crowd did not, that Mr. Pence just told him in no uncertain terms that he would not do what Mr. Trump was demanding. Mr. Trump told the crowd, a crowd of his supporters that remarked to his advisors the night before were angry. Oh, shit. Okay. Trump actions on January 6th. Trump remarks to advisors the night before that the crowd was angry. That the election had been stolen, that the country would no longer exist if this purported crime were not stopped, and that the discovery of fraud licensed them to go by very different rules. What? Okay. This can also go in here. Although Mr. Trump at one point told his supporters to peacefully and patriotically make their voices heard, he used the word fight more than 10 times in his speech, concluding by directing his supporters to march onto the Capitol and give members of Congress the kind of boldness that they need to take back our country. He also told the angry crowd that if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. Mr. Trump gave his supporters false hope that Mr. Pence was going to overturn the election. At Mr. Trump's urging, thousands of his supporters marched onto the ellipse. From the ellipse to the Capitol building. There, Mr. Pence began the certification around 1 p.m. Outside the building, the crowd swelled and broke through barriers, cording off the grounds. The crowd that attacked the Capitol was filled with Mr. Trump supporters, and made clear by their Trump signs and flags, as detailed below. Yeah. After his speech, Mr. Trump returned to the White House around 1:30, settled in the dining room off the Oval Office. There he watched television news coverage of the events at the Capitol and reviewed Twitter on his phone. When the angry crowd advanced onto the Capitol building and breached it around 2:13, forcing the Senate to recess, several of Trump's advisors rushed into the dining room and told him that a riot started at the Capitol and that riots were in the building. Over the course of the afternoon, they forcefully urged Mr. Trump to issue a calming message to his supporters. Trump resisted, repeatedly remarking that the people at the Capitol were angry because the election had been stolen. Jesus Christ. Just before 2:24, the news channel playing on the television in the dining room where Mr. Trump sat aired an interview with an individual marching from the ellipse to the Capitol who expressed anger at Mr. Pence and stated, "But I still believe that President Trump has something else left." Then around 2:24, sitting alone, Mr. Trump issued a tweet. Jesus Christ. Dude, this is like... This is insane. Let me repeat what I just read. Okay. The news channel was playing on the television in the dining room where Mr. Trump sat and was sitting, aired an interview with an individual marching from the ellipse to the Capitol who expressed anger at Mike Pence. Then, at 2:24 p.m., sitting alone, Mr. Trump issued a tweet attacking Mr. Pence and fueling the riot. Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution. 1 minute later, the United States Secret Service was forced to evacuate Mr. Pence to a secure location at the Capitol. When an advisor at the White House learned this, he rushed to the dining room and informed Mr. Trump, who replied, "So what?" The rioters at the Capitol had been motivated and directed by Mr. Trump, and he continued to resist advisors' requests to direct them to leave. Throughout the afternoon, crowds at the Capitol hunted for Mike Pence and other lawmakers. Some were chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." At 2:38 and 3:30, Mr. Trump issued 2 more tweets, falsely suggesting that the Capitol events were peaceful and asking individuals to remain that way. He tweeted a video for the first time asking them to leave the Capitol. Yeah, he didn't even tell them to go home. He just said stay peaceful. Even though they had already been in restricted ground. The first time he told somebody to go home was at 4 o'clock. At this time, he issued 6 o'clock tweet. Mr. Trump tried to reach out to 2 state senators. Yes, we're to get them to continue to... Okay, we're going to stop reading here. We might pick up the rest later, but, I'm gonna stop reading, and we're going to do some debates, I think, because I have some fury that I need to get out. But I'm gonna go pee real quick, so